it's a bit like hypnotherapy, except you are wide awake and taking part. Some people call it emotional acupuncture without the needles. And it uses meridian points mostly around the face and the hands, a little bit on the body. And by tapping on those and focusing on quite specific statements to you, it helps you tap into your subconscious, and it brings out things that you don't even know you believe. So we've all got a subconscious store of memories, thoughts, beliefs, some of which will be true, some of which we will have embellished with time, some of which we don't even know we're even thinking, but they actually affect every single thing that we do. And it's just a remarkably speedy way of tapping into those subconscious thoughts. And I think for me, the most powerful thing that happened when I was having my EFT was, and I can't even remember what we were actually talking about and what I was tapping on, but what came up all of a sudden, and I just felt this huge lump coming in my throat, and then I started sobbing, was that my parents had divorced or separated when I was 4 years old, and I always thought that I'd handled it really well because that's just how I grew up. So I, both remarried, and that was just the way it was as far as I was concerned. But actually, deep down, buried somewhere, I had manifested this belief that I wasn't good enough. My dad had left because I wasn't good enough. Wow. And I had no idea I thought that. But then once I realised it, it made so much sense on my choices and behaviours, particularly in relationships, because I never really pushed myself. I was always settling for just the fact that somebody liked me. So that was good enough.
Yeah that's absolutely fantastic. So it's absolutely no surprise whatsoever that this personal transformation, you've taken it to a professional level.
Well, I just, for me, personal experience adds so much more value onto anything that we do, particularly when we're sort of working in a therapeutic space. It just opens up all that understanding and helps you really empathise with people and understand what's going on with them in their minds and their relationships.
I totally agree, because you and I have a lot of similarities in our backgrounds, with personal traumas and challenges and things that have happened with us, which is why we do what we do. So thank you very much for sharing that, Sue, because that's something that listeners can actually start straight away doing today, can't they? I know. Do you know a guy called Brad Yates? Because he's just a guy I've seen online, and he does a lot of free YouTubes. Do you think? What is your opinion on him?
I haven't come across. No, I haven't. I've done a lot of training with a man called Carl Dawson over here in the UK, who has also taken EFT to another level with something called matrix re-imprinting.
Right.
But it's just a magical treatment. I love it.
So could people Google Carl Dawson and find out about him and take, find out what it's, So that's Carl Dawson.
Carl Dawson, Carl with a K, Karl, Dawson. Or if you look up matrix re-imprinting, there's a lot of information about that.
Right, thank you, fantastic. Okay, so down to the nitty-gritty. What is the most important relationship we have? Who is that with?
It's with ourselves.
And why is that, Sue? Take us through that.
Well, it all starts with us, because when we love ourselves, when we like who we are, it affects all our other relationships, because we then start to honour exactly who we are as an individual. So we start to take notice of our values, we honour those, and if you're not living life in accordance with your values, which are sort of things that really mean a lot on a core level, then there's always going to be some kind of unease and not being completely happy. And I know from the work I do and from my own experiences that when we are happy with who we are, everything else is so much easier, because we don't get upset by other people's behaviors. We understand that, you know, and it's not being selfish when you live life according to your own inner rules. It's actually self-care.
So it's a selfless act. Yeah.
But so many people struggle with it. It seems to be the hardest thing for people to get their head around.
Do you think that's possibly with our upbringing, that we're taught to always put others first?
Definitely. I think we're brought up in quite often to to think about others, and actually self-love doesn't mean that you're not caring or putting other people first. It just means that you are listening to your own needs as well.
I think that's what people don't understand, isn't it? That's beautifully put.
It doesn't, self-love does not turn you into an arrogant, egotistical, selfish, nasty person. It actually encourages more love, because you've got more love to give. And it almost radiates from you when you have that inner belief, that inner happiness. Then it just spreads out. You can just dish it out everywhere.
So basically, the more you look after yourself, the more you have to give to others. So actually you become a better friend, daughter, wife, husband, whatever. You're a better person and have so much more to give by looking after you first.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite sayings is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And
that's it in a nutshell. That's beautiful.
So we keep ourselves topped up, and then we have more to give to everyone else.
Wonderful. So if someone is they're not sure if they're perhaps in a toxic relationship or really much about it, what would you say? How could you spot the warning signs of a toxic relationship? What would you say to that?
There are many warning signs. I think the biggest problem with toxic relationships is that when you're in one, quite often it's something that creeps up on you unawares. So you're not quite sure that it's happening, and it always takes you by surprise. And one of the biggest things is something called gaslighting, where if a very toxic relationship, if someone's gaslighting you, they will be playing with your mind, really, and they will quite often turn things around so that it becomes your fault. If you try and discuss an issue, then it will be turned around and you will have caused an argument, or everything will be your fault. Quite often people can question your own memories, so you're not quite sure whether you can even trust yourself or your own thoughts and memories. Your words can be twisted. And if someone else is constantly playing a victim role in a partnership to make you feel bad, then that is so unhealthy. But all these things, they creep up so slowly that it's quite hard to spot them, particularly if it's quite a narcissistic type relationship. Then it normally starts off with something called love bombing, where you're wooed and wined and dined and swept off your feet really quickly. And so you kind of fall in love very, very quickly and think this is the one, and it can just change slowly and steadily from there.
And then I guess over time it becomes the norm. You think that that's how you should feel, and that's your deal in life, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you don't trust yourself anymore, because you've had your own memories and thoughts and everything questioned so much. You actually start to lose trust in your own mind. You question your own sanity, and you think that you're the one who's going mad. And you can think that you're the one with the problems, particularly if you have someone who's constantly telling you that you're the one with the problem. Then of course you're going to believe it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you feel everything's your fault, and so then you must be racked with guilt if you've caused all of this.
Yeah. And that obviously eats into your confidence and your self-belief and your self-esteem, and just erodes who you are.
So again, we lose sight of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think some of the other things that people need to look out for in sort of toxic relationships are control issues. So control can be anything from controlling the finances, not letting you have any access or any knowledge of joint finances, controlling your freedom. So if you're restricted from seeing friends or family, or if you're allowed to go out and see people, but then when you come home, you're always met with a drama or someone sort of giving you a hard time. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time and you can't say what you really want to or what you really think because you're frightened of the consequences, all of those are actually quite abusive behaviours. And on top of that, you've obviously got sort of the more known abuses, such as verbal and physical and sexual and psychological.
Wow, there's a big range there, isn't there, of from every aspect, really.
Yes, definitely.
So so now you're in this negative state, you're not really feeling very good about anything at all. What happens actually to your energetic vibration when you're in this negative state? What actually happens?
So our energetic vibration is, and this comes down to quantum science, quantum physics. So we are all made of energy. Every part of us is basically energy, and we radiate an energetic force around us. And negative emotions actually vibrate on a much lower level, a slower level than positive emotions. And I always perceive people's energy when they're in a very negative state, it becomes quite dark and a little bit murky. It's a bit like wading through sludge. And I think sometimes you can even feel that when you're not feeling good about things. Everything feels like it's so much effort, and it's just almost like wading through treacle sometimes.
Yeah, it seems slow and hard work, and you just want to put your shoulders go forward and your head hangs low. Yeah.
And so it kind of drags you down, but then that heavy dark energy is then it's quite hard to get out of when you're really stuck in it. And other people also pick up on that, and sometimes people can shy away from you, or they can sort of pick up negative opinions of you, but it's just a very heavy, murky kind of energy. Whereas the positive emotions vibrate quite highly, and it's a much lighter, clearer energy. So if you try and think about, when you feel really happy and excited and having a fun time, everything around you seems much lighter and easier.
Okay, so if we're in this negative energetic vibration, this really negative state, this low vibration, how can we get out of it? What could we do?
One of the things that I start with people is to try and help them reframe things, because I think when we're stuck in that, it's very easy to look on everything as being negative.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you do. You get very, and it becomes a habit, and everything you think about is negative. But we all have complete control over our thoughts, and sometimes we have to step in and just be a little bit more firmer with what we're thinking. I always suggest that people start trying to reframe what's going on and put the positive spin on it.
Right. So change how they actually see what's going on.
Yeah. So like my perception, of my marriage was that, yes, I made a mistake, but I've got 2 amazing children out of it. So I will always look on it as a positive experience. Plus, it gave me the most amazing learning opportunity to learn to get to know myself really well. But if you're stuck in that kind of relationship right now, then you can always just start with very simple things, like when you go to bed, think of 3 things that you're really thankful for. every single day.
Yeah, gratitude is just amazing, isn't it? Because it really does